Hey Dylan, this is Jared with some video feedback for you. And I've attached this document here to the email. So I'll let you go ahead and read through it. You might print it out. It's pretty long, but students have done that and just put it in the evaluation tab in the notebook, just as a way to keep track of some of the feedback that you've gotten. Please keep in mind too that all this should be taken with a grain of salt. I'm new to your teaching context. I have a limited understanding of what students' prior learning is and where you're at in the whole process that's unfolding. And so ultimately, you're the judge to decide which of this you take and do something with, and which of this you just kind of shelf for now, or maybe you have a good reason why you did things a certain way. So please don't feel like you have to respond to all of my bullet points. Please don't feel like you need to defend yourself in any way. As I told you as I left the classroom on Tuesday, I really think bottom line is for one of your first lessons, I think you did a really nice job considering some of the absent students, considering some of the interesting schedule changes, and then considering just your first time really taking solo control of the classroom. I think you did an awesome job. So I'm not going to read through all of these points, but just want to try to clarify some of them as we go through here. So first of all, I thought that when you stepped out into the hallway after we had chatted a little bit in between passing periods, that's an awesome way just to connect with students who are in your classes, maybe students who you're coaching, maybe students you don't even know or have. I've made connections with students in the hallway, and that's really the only point during the day that I've seen them. But any positive sort of relationship that you can have, let students know that they're welcome in your classroom, remind them if there's something they need to take out for the start of class. So I thought that was awesome. I overhear one student I guess it would be right near the door, that wall right near the door. He said, "What's on the agenda today?" And you explained it to him, but I thought, man, that's a great example of why we talk about posting student learning objectives on the board, so that as students walk in, they can take a look. It's in the same place every day, and they can say, hey, this is what we're going to do today. So when I leave the classroom, this is the objective, this is the goal, this is what I should have as I leave that I didn't have as I entered. And so I thought, hey, take that into consideration. Again, I know it's not really your classroom, but maybe that's something that your mentor teacher would be okay with putting on the board there. All of these times are after the bell rang right around 1:49. I just started a clock, stopwatch. And so what's helpful about this is sometimes you can see, okay, all of this stuff happened between 1 minute and 9 minutes. So this is kind of your direct instruction. You began a PowerPoint presentation over creating a worksheet. I asked the question here, just clarify the expectations. I was a little unclear. Were the students just supposed to listen to the presentation? Were they supposed to be taking down notes? Do they have a notebook? Is there a certain notation method that you recommend for the class? Some of them were really focused with you. They were connected. Others maybe not so much. I can't necessarily judge their attention, but I just noticed some wandering eyes and those kinds of things. Another thing that I just wanted to bring up, maybe you've heard of it in your classes, but it's this idea of the gradual release of responsibility. So you were going through and you were talking about setting up, I think it was a worksheet for the accounting worksheet, but you didn't really give like a model or an example of how to go through this. And so one of the things that we teach is when we're teaching somebody a new skill, sometimes we like to model it for them. That's the I do, right? Like I, as the instructor, show you how to do this. And then I put a little more of the responsibility onto you. And we take another example, and we as a class do that together. And then finally, you're ready for kind of the independent practice, the you do. You do it alone. You do it kind of solo. And I thought this first part where you were leading the class through the PowerPoint would have been a great example of, you showed some examples, but it would have been a great opportunity for you to actually input some data and do the I do portion. Because then you got into the work together, like for 6-1 and 6-2, which I assume is kind of a we do, like students are working cooperatively. It was really quiet during the first work together. And then you had them do what I think was some independent practice on their own. And then as you got to that independent practice point, just a couple of questions that I run by anybody who has students working for a period of time. And you had students working for, right around 10 minutes on that 6-1 independent practice. How do you know when every student is done? And are students clear about what the next step is? So you mentioned kind of post-teaching, you said there are some students who are like, they're moving ahead. They're super fast at this. This is not challenging for them. What are they supposed to do if you allot 10 minutes and it only takes them 5? Likewise, what about those students who you allot 10 minutes and they're still only 2/3 of the way done? What's next for them? What are they supposed to do? So those are just some questions to consider. And then just some things that I noticed, not right or wrong, that there's some students talking to each other or some students with earbuds in or any of that kind of stuff. I just wasn't clear on what the expectations were. Sorry, I had to pause periodically to help one of my children with something. As we move through, then you move on to 6.2, there were a couple of times where I just noticed, Dylan, where you say things like, you understand that? Any questions? And you're making an attempt to provide clarity, right? To offer an opportunity for students to ask questions if they have them. The concern is that you're given very little wait time. And I also don't know how many students are comfortable in a class of 22 like that, asking a question out loud. So maybe there's an opportunity to have them turn to a neighbor, ask a question to a neighbor, see if there are common questions or something like that. Just something to consider. It might kind of be just kind of a nervous habit or kind of just a routine that you've built up. Hey, you get it? You all right? Any questions? Thumbs up. I do some similar things at times. But anyways, just some observations and then questions for you to consider. You don't have to do anything with these. The questions might be an opportunity for you to reflect in your Friday email to me, but don't feel obligated to do that. Just two observations. First of all, that I want you to know, students appear to both like and respect you as a teacher. And I think that's important. You're feeling a little bit self-conscious, I think, as you move into this position. I don't know that you should. I think that they respect you. They treated you with respect. They respect what you know about the content. They're comfortable asking you questions individually and raising their hands. So I just encourage you to continue building relationships with all of your students. As we talked about, there's this huge gap in the desks over on the wall that's right on where the door is. And you seem to spend a lot of time there, especially with those guys. I think they may be basketball players. You might know them that way. But I encourage you to just make sure that you're also giving time and attention to the other students that are in the classroom as well. Whether they seem interested or not, just make that your priority of dividing attention equally. And then I thought your preparation was amazing. Your PowerPoint was clear, it was coherent, all the student materials were prepared. You really had a grasp of the content. I'm not a business guy, and so you kind of lost me early on, but that's not a put down. Like, I don't think that your students were necessarily lost. So good work there, keep it up. As far as questions you might want to consider, you mentioned something at the end before I left, and you said there were a couple of students who had nothing written on their worksheet, and they would hand it in that way. And that concerns me. And I'm curious about where we go with that, what we do with that. Do you as a teacher feel comfortable accepting that, that lack of engagement? Again, this isn't your classroom. But I think you can set expectations, and I think you can have hard and difficult conversations with those students about what your expectations are when they're in your class. And the reason I say that is as a teacher, you want to be able to assess, what do your students know? All right, what did they learn today? How are they changed? How are they different when they leave your classroom at 2:45 than they were when they entered the classroom at 1:45? Okay, and so that's something I just want you to reflect upon. And maybe you're able to look at the worksheets they completed. Maybe it's a quiz they're going to take. Maybe it's an exit ticket that you provide, something like that. And then I also say, just a second, you got to get a little guy up at the table here. Okay, buddy. You are more than willing to answer questions, and you are engaging with students, a variety of students. But my concern is how you ensure that all students' questions are answered, even those who might not necessarily raise their hand or might not necessarily vocally volunteer a question in the middle of class. So again, those 10 minutes when students are working independently, are you moving around the classroom? Are you eyeing their papers? Are you checking to see if they're making adequate progress or if there's an area they're kind of stumped upon? And maybe they're doing fine and you just connect with them, eye contact, you good, you good? And maybe there are some holes in their understanding that you're able to quickly just sort of fill in as you move around the classroom that way. You know that students were confused because they wanted to have or be able to do step 3, or they wanted to move on. And I thought that observation, I told you in the classroom, I thought, this is great teaching. What you were doing, you were recognizing that there is an issue, you were assessing the situation, and you were trying to make changes. That's what we do in teaching all the time. The best laid plans sometimes are thrown out within the first 5 minutes. So your ability to adjust and to adapt instruction and to think about, how might I do this differently if I were to teach this again tomorrow or next period, that's really important. So that's a good question to reflect upon. And then finally I say, although the structure of this class was strange, due primarily to the pep rally at the end, how could you have added some more closure to the lesson to wrap up student thinking on this subject and reflect upon their learning? You had a good chunk of time here, at least 5 minutes of kind of unstructured time where students weren't really engaged in any sort of learning. My question would be, or my encouragement for you would be, to start thinking about quick exit tickets, ways to encourage student reflection, to share with each other, to share out to the class, to write something down, to sort of summarize what they learned today, to reflect briefly about their learning before they go on to the next class or on to the pep rally or off to work or wherever it is that they go. Okay, so those are my quick comments for you, Dylan. Again, I think it was a fantastic first lesson. Definitely some areas that you could look at tweaking, but hey, that's any of us, right? It's a growth mindset. We're constantly growing. We're constantly learning, and you're in a challenging situation, as you kind of enter this realm of teaching. So keep your chin up. Keep me posted about maybe a second observation that we could schedule the end of March, or maybe the last week of March or the first week of April. And yeah, I look forward to getting your reflection on Friday, along with any comments or questions you might have about this. Please don't be a stranger. If there's something I've said that you're concerned about or you don't understand, you know where to reach me. So yeah, don't be a stranger. Have a great rest of the week, and I'll let you get to it. Thanks, Dylan.